Hello and welcome to T3 Day 7 of Honors Precalculus. And yeah, we do have an assessment coming up. So let's review conic sections. Number one here, we're looking for an equation of an ellipse. So it's an ellipse given the vertices on its major axes are these 2 points. So we have 2 points and its eccentricity is 4, 5. So what we can do right here is we can draw these points. Let's draw these points. What do we end up with? We end up with these 2 points. So if those are vertices on the ellipse, we know that the center is halfway between. So we know the center is halfway between. So we know the center right here, it's going to be -2. So the center is going to be 4, -2. So that immediately tells us that we end up with x minus 4 squared over a squared plus y plus 2 squared over b squared is going to be equal to 1 because of the general form of an ellipse. Now we just need to find a and b. Well, we know that this distance right here is 5, which is the same as this one. So that means that b is going to be 5. So we know that that's going to be 25. So we can fill it in, which means that all we have to find out now is a, and that should be a squared right there. Sorry, that should be a squared. Well, the first thing we know is that the eccentricity is equal to c over b. And we know that b is equal to 5, and we know the eccentricity is 4/5. So we know that 4/5 is going to be c over b, which is 5. So that tells us that c is equal to 4. That's nice. C is equal to 4. But we also know in an ellipse that c squared is going to be equal to b squared minus a squared. So we know that 16 is therefore equal to 25 minus a squared. So a is going to be equal to 3. So then you just plug that in over there and you get our final equation, which is right here. If you want to check this, use Desmos. It's pretty cool. It works. So in this one right here, we're looking for the equation of a hyperbola. And it gives us foci and the transverse axis endpoints. So let's graph these and see what they look like. So the first thing I graph there are the 2 foci. There's -3, 0, and there's -3, -11. So that means that the center is going to be right between the two. So let's put that center in right here. We know the center is just going to be -11 over 2, so -5.5. You can do -5.5. That's fine right there. And then the x value is -3. So what you can immediately then write for this is going to be y plus 5.5 squared over a squared minus, and because it's going up and down, we know y is first, x plus 3 squared over b squared is equal to 1. So now we need to find those two things. Well, first of all, we know that this distance right here is 5.5. So that means that b is equal to 5.5. Sorry, those are foci, so this is a c value right here. So this is a c value is 5.5. The distance from the center to the foci is the c value. My mistake. So then what you do is you can graph these axes endpoints. So -3, -9. It's going to be right here, so -9. So this distance right here is 3.5 right there, 3.5. That right there, since that's the vertice right there, that means that this right here is the b value. B is that one. So b is equal to 3.5, the distance to the endpoints right there, the transverse endpoints. So what you can then find is, you know that a is therefore equal to that. So you get y plus 5.5 squared over 3.5 squared minus x plus 3 squared over b squared is equal to 1. And now we can use the c and a values to find b. So we know that c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared in this case. So we know that 5.5 squared, that's the distance from right here, the distance from the center to the foci, the center to the foci. So then that equals a squared, so it's 3.5 squared plus b squared. And you can use a calculator on this to find out that b squared is equal to 18. You can square it and then subtract, that's fine. So what that means is you end up with a final formula of this. There you go. So that's what you have right there. So what we're doing in number 3 is we're finding the point of intersection, and we have a circle with the definition there and a hyperbola right there. So this circle right here, it's a circle of radius 5 centered at 1, 2. So that circle is going to be x plus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared is equal to 5 squared. So that's the circle. Now we just need the equation of the hyperbola. So what we end up with is it's centered at that right there. So it's going to be y minus 2 squared over b squared right there, minus x plus 1 squared over a squared is equal to 1. Sometimes people flip the a and b's, but just remember you've got to think the thing under y and the thing under x right there. So how do you do this? Well, we need to find the a and b values, but what it tells us, and it looks nasty, but it actually isn't here, it says the vertical transverse axis length is 2 root 7 and the conjugate axis is 2 root 7. So that means in this box right here, the width is 2 root 7 and the height is 2 root 7. So what's half of that? What's half of each of those? What's half of each of those? It's root 7. So what that means is a and b here. So the vertical length is the b value and the horizontal length is the a value right there. Both of them is root 7. So it's root 7, root 7, root 7, root 7, because the entirety is 2 root 7 for each of them. The entirety of each is 2 root 7. So in this case, a equals b equals root 7. So when you square all of them, you end up with y minus 2 squared over root 7 squared is 7, minus x plus 1 squared root 7 squared is 7 equals 1. You can multiply everything by 7 and end up with y minus 2 squared minus x plus 1 squared is equal to 7. So now you have one equation here and you have another equation here, and you're trying to find out where they intersect one another. Well, what can happen here is you might have noticed that you end up with opposite signs here. So you have this thing right here and you have this here. So if you add these two things together, what you're doing is you're taking these two things and you're adding them together. The x plus 1 squareds cancel and you're left with 2y minus 2 squared is equal to 5 squared plus 7 right there. So that's 32. So you end up divide by 2 and you get y minus 2 squared is equal to 16. Take the square root of both sides, you end up with y minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 4. So y is equal to 2 plus or minus 4 right there. So then you have to find out what does x equal. So you can go back to either one of them. Either one of them is fine. I'll take this one right here. So we know that, let's say y is equal to 2. So 2 plus 4 is 6, or y equals 2 minus 4 is negative 2. If you plug in 6 here, you end up with x plus 1 squared plus 6 minus 2 is 4. So 4 squared is equal to 5 squared. So you end up with x plus 1 squared is equal to 25 minus 16 is 9. Take the square root, so you get x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus 3. So x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus 3. So that means you have two answers. X is equal to negative 4 or x is equal to 2. So you end up with two answers here, 2 comma 6 or negative 4 comma 6. And then over here you plug in negative 2 again. Well, you plug in negative 2 for y and you end up with x plus 1 squared plus negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4, so it's negative 4 squared equals 5 squared. Well, that's still 16, and you subtract it from 25, so you get x plus 1 again is equal to 9. So x is again going to equal negative 1 plus or minus 3. So you end up with, this time, negative 1 comma negative 2, and the other one is going to be plus 3 is going to be 2 comma negative 2. So in this case, there are two answers there, and there's 4 answers total. So be careful.